What's up, Dice Crew? We got Maino speaking on the whole situation pertaining to Troy Ave and Taxstone. Let's see what all Maino got to say. I'm gonna keep it to Benji for y'all doing the reaction. Y'all keep it to Benji for me in the comments. Let's rock.
We want to talk about the coming together of the streets and the content world. You have like the craziest front row seat for that ever because you were there when the Taxstone and Troy Ave situation went down.
Right.
Almost nobody was there besides you. You got to see this take place, and that to me is like so instructive. We're talking 2016, almost 10 years ago.
Right.
A situation where somebody lost their life, rest in peace to Banga, but then also one person ends up going to jail, maybe for damn near the rest of their life. Troy Ave had to deal with all kinds of terrible shit as a result of that, regardless of how you feel about them. But I mean, looking back on that, like, how did that feel at the time versus how it felt now, or feels now?
Again, unfortunate. The whole situation, unfortunate for everybody. I don't feel like I was a victim of it. I hear these.
You know, I just want to say this. You know, a lot of men, they feel like when you attach being a victim to themselves, it kind of make them fall in the category of being less than. They feel like that is associated with being like a coward, a B word, a H-O, however you want to flip it. But in my opinion, I will say this. If you went somewhere with a lady, you know, picked this lady up, however one went, had a lady with you, and something terrible happened and the lady ended up injured, I feel like somewhere down the line, you have to feel like a victim. It's not saying that you have to carry this whole, like, you know, weird aura about yourself, crying and whatnot and acting like, you know, become weak. You don't have to be weak. You know, you don't have to feel like, you know, like it could have just happened to you. You know, when you go through so much stuff in these streets or in life, certain things don't take a strong, traumatic effect upon you. But it's still, in my opinion, I would say that Maino was a victim in that situation because I think he cares about his girl. You know, I think it was probably a couple people who got injured in there that Maino cared about, you know? So anytime you feel any level of emotion that brings you to, like, you know, oh man, I wish this wouldn't have happened, or I feel sorry for a person, or I feel bad because this happened to him, then you gotta be, you know, you feel some type of way of a victim. You know what I'm saying? No matter how it go, whether a person mentally F you, or have your emotions affected, or have your physical body affected, if all those occur, any one of those occur, you fall in the category of being victimized. You might not be no crybaby or no weak individual, but you was a victim. If someone breaks in your house, you know, you might chalk it up to the game, but on paper, with the police and insurance and all that, you're going to be a victim of a house burglary. If someone steals your vehicle, you know, you're going to be a victim of car theft. So, you know, you fall in these categories even though you don't have nightmares and, you know, it don't ruin your day. You know what I mean? But Maino got the right to feel how he feel. You know, we going to tune in some more to see what all he got to say.
Stupid stories when they say, when I'm beefing on the internet with somebody and they say, oh, your girl got shot and you ran out the spot and left her. I was the last person there. I was the last person there after everybody left. I watched Troy Ave leave. I watched everybody leave. You know why I was there? Because I couldn't leave a girl. We went and got all our people. My brother 80 was stuck in there. We went and got him back. We went and got Shorty back. We went and got everybody. I stayed until the police and the ambulance came. I even watched her get taken downstairs. So again, stories versus real life. How I feel about it, I'm numb to it at this point. I'm numb to it. It's just, it is what it is. But as far as that, I was the last person there. How I feel about the situation in the whole, I don't feel victimized. I don't feel like it was something on me. I feel like there was an issue that started maybe on the internet that got out of hand, that became something else. And now real life happened. And nobody won. Who won?
Nah, for sure. It's just a crazy situation.
And you know what? That is something that I agree with. No one really won in that situation. You know, out of the whole Taxstone, Troy Ave, who really won at the end of the day? Look where everybody is at. I mean, you know, Troy Ave, Taxstone, who knows what the future holds tomorrow. But at this point, you know, everybody took a loss. I mean, Troy Ave lost Banga. He has to do time in jail. I think his whole, you know, his money situations with his label and other friends, just everything just fell apart. Taxstone, 35 years, all these type of things. That's like, Maino Grill hit, other people hit. It was just definitely an unfortunate situation, and I don't really look at it like anyone won in that situation. But that's why I want to say this. You have to be mindful if you actually want to try to carry out your anger when you have problems with people, because you can't show up like you want to put on the show and perform in front of 1,000 people, hundreds of people, just so you want everybody to know you're not no scary guy. Because when you sign yourself up for all that, trying to prove yourself in certain ways, you also signing yourself up to be like a sacrifice. Your career, your life, your lifestyle, whatever you got going on. Because it's rare that you're going to get out of a situation when you go somewhere and try to have an altercation where it's, you know, 100 cameras and 100 witnesses. You know, it's scenarios where people, you know, probably okay and get out of them jams and be all right. But for the most part, you kind of signing yourself up to an unfair situation as far as trying to succeed on you proving that you tough.
Because it's like, you know, the line between journalist or content creator and gangster or rapper used to be a mile wide. It used to be like such different categories. Nobody's going to mistake a Maino for a Elliot Wilson, right? But then all of a sudden the internet comes in and podcasting comes in, and all of a sudden you have somebody like Taxstone who's really moving around a certain way every day. And then in his mind it's like, shit, I got a problem with somebody, I'm going to make content about that. And that just created a situation that honestly might have been like the craziest podcaster violence situation that we've seen so far. I don't know if I can think of anything else that ended up that.
Me, myself, I don't think that falls in the category as a podcast issue. Taxstone was doing his podcasting. Troy Ave was doing his music. I think Troy Ave and them wasn't feeling Taxstone opinions about Troy Ave music. Then they both come from the streets. So in that one incident, you got podcasting, music, and street people. All that in one. You have rappers who jump off into street stuff. But then you have street people who just know how to rap or just pick up rapping or turn into trying to rap. It's a difference, you know what I'm saying? Just like, you know, podcasting. You're going to have people who's a real life journalist type person. Then you're going to have people who got a skill or a gift and got enough sense, and they're going to just do it because they know how when they can and they're good at it. But I feel like that's not necessarily like just a podcast issue. But y'all let me know what y'all think about it in the comments.
Serious.
Yeah.
And it was so early on in the process of all
that was early on. Even for him, I think he was ahead of his time with what he was doing as far as the podcasting.
Yeah, he was the first one through the door in terms of being a street dude who was really talking about his life in a podcast.
First one taking his life experiences and putting it in podcast form. I just think that whole thing just went to a place that we just can't come back from.
No.
You know, for him having to wake up and deal with what he got to deal with, and again, Banga being dead or whoever, like, it's just, you know.
Definitely. It also kind of like predicted the way that a lot of this shit would end up, because arguably both of them ended up cooperating in a way that previously wouldn't have really been.
Who cooperated?
Troy Ave and Taxstone to various degrees.
The only person cooperated was Troy Ave.
Okay. I heard a lot of people try to put that on Tax. I never really got to the bottom of it.
Yeah. They say something. They say that his lawyer wrote a letter to the judge.
Right.
And this and that. I hear a lot, but listen, as it pertains to that, one person got on the stand and told on another person. That's really that. And I don't even want to highlight that because then he'll be making a video later like, what, Chano, you know what I'm saying? So.
Why people are saying that Taxstone played some type of part of cooperating is because your lawyer cannot do things without your consent. So if this lawyer is writing letters to the judge and those letters can kind of affect Troy Ave or anybody else in a criminal way, Taxstone cooperated. That's just flat out at the end of the day. Like, maybe he could have done this stuff without Taxstone knowing. Anything is possible. But if he, stamped and okay and approved for his lawyer to send some letters to the judge that can incriminate somebody, then you cooperated, man, because you trying to lighten your sentence up. Remember, we got to always remember that. One of the roots of being like a cooperator, a snitch, a rat, is you trying to save yourself and get yourself out of a situation or give yourself a deal. So if you doing all these things, trying to work a deal and get yourself a better outcome than what you already was given, then you cooperating. I ain't saying I know the details, so I don't know what Taxstone know or not. But if he know his lawyer did that, and if his lawyer did that without Taxstone knowing, then his lawyer put him in that bad position. And with Troy Ave, I don't agree with what he did. He was definitely coming out making songs and videos. He was like so proud, telling people he was gonna be on the stand. He making songs on the stand. He just thought that was just so stand up to do. I just couldn't respect that at the end of the day. Then he was making jerseys with the Kevin Durant stuff, with Taxstone on it, symbolizing 35 for Kevin Durant jersey, and the sentencing that Taxstone got. I just wasn't respecting that. And that adds on even more on how all these people just took a loss in this situation. Put their lives at jeopardy and put their characters at jeopardy.
At this point in your life, though, do you consider yourself a content creator in any meaningful sense? I mean, you do interviews, you do what you have to do to keep your...
I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
I'm a hustler, man. I'm a hustler. I like.
And shout out to Maino about that, because I do respect that for Maino. You can tell that been one of his pushes, that whole hustler, hustle hard movement. He stayed active. Maino tried to keep himself active, and I respect that. Because it's no longer about a person just being good in one lane. That's not really keeping people afloat. Unless you like a Drake or Lil Wayne or something, Birdman, most people, they got multiple things going on that could keep them hot, relevant, and succeeding. Or if you can make it happen, like even like a Dr. Dre and the Dre beats and all that, and then that's great too,
I like some of that. But I'm not like a dedicated content creator going on my page and actually doing, working my YouTube to that point. I do a little bit, but yeah, I'm a hustler, man.
Could you see yourself sitting down and doing...
And that goes back to what I just stated. Maino calls himself a hustler. And like he said, he likes some of that stuff, but he ain't really all into the content creating and working his YouTube as well as he posts to and all that. So at this point, he's still just a person that's a hustler who's just happened to be podcasting.
A weekly podcast with a couple other people.
Well, I did that. I had Kitchen Talk for a while, and that was going really, really well. And I see people saying, oh, he stopped it because it didn't work. No, I stopped it because I had got up to maybe 70 episodes, right? I've had everybody on there. I had Bobby Shmurda's first interview when he came home. I had the Mayo on there. When you go back and look, everybody was on there, right? And then I was approached to take the show and put it on Fox Soul. Once I did the deal with Fox Soul, it changed the dynamic of the show.
How so?
Because now we wasn't using podcast mics no more. Now we using labs. They didn't want certain things in it, so now it turned it into like a TV show.
Really?
Right. So now when we started doing that, I got actors coming. I got Method Man in there. I got Lala in there. I got
did they make it easier to just get all these big time guests and everything?
No. I still had to. That was my relationships,
okay, yeah.
Right? But we did it. But it changed the dynamic of the show. I was shooting one episode per week. But remember, when I started shooting my shows on the pandemic, when nobody had nothing else to do anyway. So we were shooting on Monday, just shooting on Sunday.
Those who was doing the podcasting, YouTubing, pre-pandemic, or when the pandemic started from the get-go, those people had great opportunities to succeed with their platforms and channels. Because a lot of people didn't have nothing to do. You had more people tuning and looking for something to watch and experience. And then when you was one of the first wave of individuals, it wasn't like where it is now to where it's 40 people you could go tune in with. You know, at first it was just a handful. So people was looking to certain people for the knowledge or the entertainment. Now it's so many people.
And dropping an episode like every Wednesday, right? Everybody, Fat Joe, who you think? I've had even come on here before.
Which one?
I gotta think of her name. She was early though. I'll find her. But everybody came on there. I stopped it because I couldn't manage it no more. It was becoming too much to do, right? And because I got lazy in the fact that I'm only gonna do it when y'all paying me to do it now. Y'all give me these 6 figures and I'm gonna give you these 10 episodes.
Right.
So now when that became the dynamic, like I'm not sitting around doing that shit every week for nothing when I can wait. Y'all ready? I give you these 10.
Yeah.
So I kind of lost my gusto on that.
But so once it stopped being like a full-time thing in your head of like, I want to make as much dope shit as possible, then it kind of became like a regular job.
That stuff like threw off Maino's creativity, his energy, his whole passion. And it happens often. You know, Maino ain't the only person who experiences that. You know, I experiences that at times to a small degree. You know, once you start focusing on certain things outside of you just doing things because you actually like to do it. You know, once you start trying to turn it into like a job or mandatory, just certain stuff, it just kind of shifts things. You know, you either catch up with it or, you know, got to make some changes.
You know, if you work at Sears, you show up for 8 hours, you're not sticking around for an extra 4 hours unless you're getting paid.
And then now, certain elements of my life is different, right? So now it's like, we not on quarantine no more. At this point, I'm in the studio, me and Jim doing Lobby Boys at the same time. We in there every night doing that. I got other stuff happening, right? So it got harder to manage. I was shooting in my house, right? And the dynamic of it, we shooting in the kitchen, on the couch, in the kitchen. I was having a cook, shout out to her, Steph Pearls Monroe. She was coming, cooking food, and after the show, we was eating. So you was getting fed, everything. It was dope. Joe Budden been on there, it was dope.